Hi, welcome to this week's edition of Blues Talk, where again John, Dave, and myself are going to look back over Leinster's defeat against the Saints, look forward to our game against Edinburgh at the weekend, and review all of the other Heineken Cup matches. So, boys, what a difference a week makes.
Oh, yeah.
Shitty shit on a shitting stick. It was poor, and it was everything that we thought. It was all our worst fears brought
Rolled
to pass
into
in
one.
front of us. All week we've been saying, kind of trying to G ourselves up and trying to, help focus the team. Remember Ulster, remember Ulster, remember Ulster. They obviously forgot Ulster because they went out there and there was no visible sign of any palpable aggression or consistency or accuracy or not really much of a game plan even.
No, there wasn't a game plan so much. We weren't let play though. I mean, they had a few crucial players that they switched around. Like they got Mafu in for got 50 minutes out of him just back from injury. They put Manoa at 8 out of the second row and got Day on. So they had a lot of big lads ready to kick the crap out of us.
They're not 30-point players though.
They didn't.
It was a 30-point turnaround, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't
But
like.
they
Don't
didn't
get
get
me wrong. I think Northampton Saints were excellent. They really were.
They weren't let play last week.
They weren't let play.
And we weren't let play.
Yeah,
this
but
week.
I mean, and that's my point. I mean, we allowed ourselves not to be let play. I mean, a team that has ambitions to win the competition doesn't allow itself be browbeaten the way Leinster allowed themselves to be browbeaten on Saturday.
That's true. I won't argue too much with you there, but they have their plan A. As I said, when plan A doesn't work, they have plan A, and they really took that plan A and rammed it home. Like every player there was tough, hard, committed, and they won the collisions, and that's how you beat. Like the Ospreys, as you've said before, Dave, they have the playbook in their locker of how to beat Leinster.
Maybe Cam he brought it with him.
Well, how you beat them is you stop them winning the collisions, you stop them at the breakdown, and once their backs don't get a supply of ball or get crap ball, it's very hard for them to do their magic, and we saw very little of that magic.
It just goes to show the importance of Sean O'Brien, I think, within the team, and Cian Healy too, to an extent, but Sean O'Brien in particular. Like, we just didn't get any go-forward ball at all.
No, we didn't. And anytime we did try and take the ball up, as you say, Saints snuffed it out at source.
Yeah.
But even, I mean, it was kind of obvious from what we saw in the first half that, something was going wrong, something needs to be changed, and it didn't happen. And that's my big worry because, okay.
Well, that actually leads me on to a point. I presume you're going to mention Matt O'Connor's tactics, right? Mm-hmm. That brings me on to a point that Kevin Doyle asks. He says, well, in round 3, the team had just come back under Joe Schmidt and used to that environment for 3 or 4 weeks. And maybe in week 4, the team is becoming back into Matt O'Connor's frame of thinking. And maybe that was reflected in the result.
Well, to a certain extent, I don't like to criticise a new coach because it does take time. I mean, it's not something... It's very hard to hit the ground running. People say, you hit the ground running. But it's actually very, very hard to do. So I don't like to criticise it. But what we saw on Saturday was something that was in direct comparison to, or in direct contrast to what we used to see with Matt O'Connor or with Joe Schmidt. In a game where we weren't going well, where our plan A wasn't working, a change that was made at the pivot position was made in the 78th minute.
Yeah.
I mean, that is too late for anyone to have a real and material effect on the game. Leo Cullen's coming on was also delayed.
Bit late, yeah.
Now, people have said, is Leo as good as he was in past years? Well, it's hard to know because obviously he's been out with injury.
Yeah.
But the one area that he hasn't been injured is up there. And what Leo Cullen has and his ability to see what's happening on the pitch and maybe tweak things himself. So you've got a situation where the players, maybe they did come out of the environment that they're used to. Which is the Joe Schmidt environment. Not that Joe is better than Matt or Joe wants to do down Matt, but they're used to the Joe Schmidt environment.
Well,
and they've come out of that into an environment that they're not quite so comfortable with just yet.
I think that I think we were saying last week that it's actually a good thing now. We don't have to change the way the team play when we get them back from Ireland camp the way we used to, and Ireland camp doesn't have to change the way that all the teams play because we're getting a more streamlined set up between the Irish coaching and the provincial coaching that we're all playing not the same game, but we're all playing a similar enough style game that there shouldn't be as much transition. And I think it's a bit harsh to say that we got them back from Joe Schmidt in great form and we've dumbed them down by leaving them with Matt O'Connor for a week. I don't fully buy in. It's an interesting point, absolutely, and it's worth debating. But
The
I don't agree with it.
The problem Matt O'Connor has, and I'll use these names for the benefit of John, who's old enough to both know and enjoy prog rock. Nobody knows who Steve Hogarth is. He replaced Fish in Marillion.
Well, that's after my time, Dave. I'd long given about 10 years after I'd given up on prog rock.
It's really hard. It's really hard to replace, to be the guy who comes in after a really successful coach. I mean, you see it in other sports. You look at David Moyes; he's replacing Sir Alex Ferguson, who was massively successful, and you're seeing it in Leinster. And it takes time for a coach to settle in. So I don't want to be too critical of him. But having said that, our tactical approach on Saturday was wrong.
Yeah, but the coach,
and it didn't change.
The coach didn't knock on balls. The coach didn't give away silly penalties like Rob Kearney did. The coach didn't kick the ball straight into touch a couple of times.
No, I'm not saying all the blame rests with him, but there were elements within his control that I don't think he acted as well as he could have acted on. I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't want to be ultra critical of Matt O'Connor, and in no way is this the start of a Matt O'Connor out campaign. In no way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. But there were elements that were in his control, and his reaction to those elements was not as we would have hoped them to be.
Well, I thought that we just tried to rush everything. We tried to score off phase 1 and phase 2.
Yeah.
We went through a number of, I think there was 2 particular phases in the game that we went and we had 20 plus phases. And neither time did we look like making any inroads into their defence. And we just played the same tactic again and again and again, instead of having variation within, and that comes down to the players on the pitch not performing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and in the player's mind, I think there was an element of complacency.
Yeah, well,
also a very motivated Northampton team.
Oh yeah, you have to take these two things. And I can't speak for Northampton because I don't watch them week in and week out. They're not my team. And
bloody good team though.
They're a very fine team, and I think they're a good team. And I was very surprised that we beat them the way we beat them over there. As I thought our win over there would be more like their win over here. But having said that, I mean, it's the thing we keep coming back to it. What happened to Ulster last year? It's the exact same thing happened to us this year. There were little screws in the head, and no player will admit to being complacent. No player will even realise he's being complacent. But you could see complacency in some of the players' performances.
You could also see the way we kind of chucked the ball across the field with no real plan. I mean, when we did get clean ball, which wasn't often, we just kind of fanned out and passed man. I think we did maybe 1 or 2 wrap rounds, which we kind of messed up a little bit. But we didn't, we'd no invention, we'd nobody running smart inside lines, we'd nobody running off the ball much, we'd no decoys.
Even when O'Driscoll made the break, there was no support for him. Similarly enough, when the last plays of the game, when Heaslip made his burst through the middle again, he had to slow and wait. No one seemed.
It happened 3 times,
and in previous seasons,
Fitzer as well.
There was trail runners running off the guys. Or even last weekend against Northampton in Franklin's Gardens, guys were following lines and they weren't doing it this time.
When guys are mentally switched on, they make those supporting lines. When they're not, they don't, because they're not expecting the run. I don't want to sound like it's all down to Leinster. I mean, Northampton were very good, and the sign of a good team is when their big star players all turn in a big performance when it's needed. If you look at the guys who really perform for Northampton, they will be the marquee names. They really put it on the line for them. I mean, Dylan Hartley was excellent. Courtney Laws, George North scored his first ever Heineken Cup try. Manoa was good. Myler was good. The guys who would be their go-to guys, they went to them and they delivered.
And North was great at 13.
He was very good at 13. Yeah.
The difference, though, possibly another way of looking at it. You touched on it earlier with saying about O'Brien being out and Healy being out. I mean, those 2 guys are big ball carrying tough guys in the pack. Like if you look through that pack, we missed one of them last week and we were fine. Missing both of them, who's carrying the ball then? It's Jamie Heaslip, good ball carrier, but he doesn't run through people. Sean Cronin runs through people to some degree, to a large degree. Didn't get much of a chance this week, but if you add the sum, you've got Devon Toner, doesn't run through people. Ruddock does, but again,
not to the back road as they played.
Not to the level.
And to a certain extent,
O'Brien and Heath.
They knew that
Healy.
They knew that Ruddock was going to be our go-to ball carrier in terms of the heavy
And that
stuff.
was easy to isolate
So that was
him,
easy
yeah.
to isolate him.
He actually didn't have a bad game.
No,
really.
I mean he didn't have. I mean Ruddock
Ruddock
actually-
and Fitzgerald, I thought, were the.
Ruddock, Fitzgerald, and Darcy, I thought were our
Darcy,
best
yeah.
players. To a certain extent, I mean, and then we brought on a guy who is quite similar to Ruddock in terms of he is like
Yeah, they're
the-
interchangeable in some ways.
the heavy unit. We didn't have anything like that could have, with quick
Changed
feet
the
like
game.
say Geordie Murphy has.
Yeah.
You can do something a bit different. You can
yeah.
change things, but then you kind of have to have that cover for.
Well, if you contrast those guys I've just named with the guys that they have, like I mean, they have the back row they had out. Tom Wood at 7, who's a big guy. Callum Clark's a beast, and Manoa, who's like it's like a South African back row.
Yeah, it was a heavy unit.
Their
all right.
2 second rows are mothers. You know,
I thought we ceded a lot of
Dylan
possession.
Hartley.
We ceded a lot of easy possession to them from lineouts. We didn't compete.
definitely.
We didn't put any pressure on them, and they chucked up guys against us. And while we might, statistically, we might have won our lineouts, the ball that we provided was very sloppy.
But 2 weeks ago, that was something I was worried about, was the pressure that Cronin will be put under at the line-out, because it is
Yeah.
the weakest part of his game. And
one of their strongest
we
parts
kind of got
too.
away with it last week. Although our line-out ball wasn't great last week, we did get away with it. But this week we got caught out on it, and it is a problem. I mean, I the 2 weakest parts of Sean Cronin's game are throwing the ball into the line-out and hooking the ball in the scrum. I mean, those are the 2 weakest parts in his game, and they're the 2 most important parts of his position. So there's got to be work done there, and maybe that's why Leinster are quite. I mean, we have 2 hookers, but they need somebody else, because maybe they're not that comfortable with Cronin being the top guy.
Well, did Dundon get a run?
No, and Dundon didn't get a run again.
Off the
And
bench, yeah.
I mean, whatever about Dundon, he doesn't have the explosiveness. He's not as good a footballer as Cronin. Cronin's a superb footballer.
Well, maybe we didn't want to take him off because we did such
Because
a lack
we-
of ball carriers.
I mean, that's it. That's why we
You
couldn't
know?
take him off, because we needed that explosiveness. But in terms of, if you had a line out, 5 metres out from the line, right, it's 79-59, and you have to win this line out to win the match. Who do you want thrown in, Cronin or Dundon?
Dundon.
Yeah.
Well, the other, to add to their massive pack, like what we often see us do is throw Sean O'Brien or Sean Cronin out in the centres
Yeah.
to make a hole. They've got, I keep calling him Jordan Turner Hall, but Luther Burrell. They've got Luther Burrell and George North in the centre. Like,
Beasts.
that's 2 absolute. You put them in a back row, they're monsters. So you don't need to put someone out in the back row to punch holes. You've got 2 guys
Yeah.
who can, so behind that big pack, you've got these 2 big lumps. I think it was an inspired decision by Malander to put George. Now, I know it was supposed to be injury related, but maybe it was just a tactic, because it really worked, and it dovetailed in with the rest of their game. So
Well, it was. I have to say, Malander took a risk, and it was he was very brave with that decision, because if their back row hadn't won the battle on the ground and at the breakdown, then George North, an inexperienced
Might have been
outside
caught
centre,
flat-footed, yeah.
would have had an awful lot of really experienced, really quick-footed guys running at him.
Yeah.
So Malander took a kind of, if you like, holistic approach to the whole selection. He was he comforted himself that the inadequacies perhaps that North might have as being inexperienced in that position, would be covered by the fact that there was going to be nobody running at him anyway.
Yeah, and there wasn't.
Wasn't for a very long time.
Well, have we blown our chance of a home quarter final now?
Yes.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, I mean, I think like at the start of this,
Our-
of the start of these
our
2
best-
rounds, would we have taken a bonus point win in the Aviva and lose by not get a bonus point
We
and lose a bonus
probably
point
would.
over? I think we might have,
Yeah.
I think we would have been happy with 6 points.
Mm.
I think that's a bonus point loss away and a bonus point win at home.
Yeah.
I'd say that's what most people would have been happy with.
We were just in such a strong position though after the last.
Yeah.
Ourselves and Ulster were the only 2 unbeaten teams. All we
But
got to do was keep on winning.
But
But the thing is, it doesn't matter. Okay, would we be happy with 5 points out of it now? Perhaps, but the thing is,
We're not.
we're not, and we shouldn't be, because what we saw in the first game is what we should be seeing all the time. Because Leinster might have had, that might be Leinster's best day all season, that might be the best they play all season, but that's what they're capable of. So
Yeah.
the fall off between that and Saturday was too great a fall off.
Yeah, but Northampton in the first match allowed Leinster to be magnificent. This game was entirely, and like even though it was only 7-3 at half time and then we got it back, within a point, 7-6, a couple of minutes into the second half. It was totally skewed. Like that scoreline was skewed because they turned down umpteen chances. To
Oh
take
yeah, they
goals.
were going for tries.
Going for tries all the time.
Yeah.
And even then they
Actually,
had.
just to interrupt you, that's one element that should be praised in Leinster's performance. Our defence
Yeah.
in the red zone was
pretty
extremely
good,
good, exceptional. It was absolutely exceptional. They, as you say, they with their strong line out, with their good maul, turning down chance after chance, with Myler putting in very good kicks into the corner. We managed to keep them out for.
And not alone that, like George North had a one-on-one with Madigan. He really should have converted that.
He should have.
Then when Ken Pesey made a
Who
breakthrough,
had a great game
he
after
did.
last week.
But he chucked out a pass. I think Kirshner just grabbed him. But like that, was a 2-on-1 at that stage in the corner, and they blew that as well. So that could have been an entirely different game.
The one other thing I'd like to say about their pack is that you've got guys like Laws, Hartley and Callum Clark in particular, and probably Manoa, who are known as to have a bit of a dirty edge to them, like a bit of a. They were clean. They didn't do any. They played hard and clean. And fair play to them. It could easily have got niggly and could easily have
I'd be
got.
very disappointed with any forward that comes off a pitch saying I played clean.
You know what I mean?
Well, no one's elbow was broken.
Yeah, we got caught.
They didn't deliberately twist somebody's leg and break
No.
it, or they didn't gouge anyone or stick their fingers in somebody's gob or do anything.
Although Hartley was giving it plenty of verbals there.
Well,
You
that's
expect a hooker
that's
to be a bit
part
yappy,
Yeah, but I thought it was very silent
Part of
from
the
the
game.
Leinster pack. When I was watching it
Yeah.
on the telly, you could constantly hear the chat from, and a couple of times it actually seemed that O'Driscoll was prompting Heaslip to go and challenge
Well,
the
this
ref.
is playing the ref. This is something else. What I noticed when I watched the game back, we didn't play the ref.
No.
Like he was very hard on not releasing. We didn't cop onto that. He also let Hartley mouth at him, and he never carded anyone. So we could have been a lot mouthier, and we could have done a lot more. We could have
got onto him a bit more.
got onto him a bit more and done a few different things to play the ref.
Yeah.
And we really
Well,
didn't.
we were very critical here of Ulster in the Rabble Pro 12 final last year that they didn't play the ref, and that we
It was
didn't.
a similar thing actually.
And
With
that's-
John, what's his name? The
Lacey.
Munster guy, John Lacey. Yeah.
That we played the ref and they didn't. We should be just as equally critical of Leinster that we didn't play the ref.
Yeah.
And again, that comes back to Leo Cullen not being on the pitch to a certain extent.
Possibly.
He is a superb referee manager.
He is. Yeah.
But like it is easy. It's always it's very easy to criticize the ref, and I thought some of his decisions were erratic.
Looking
But
back on them, I thought they were reasonably.
well, no, I agree with you. But at the match, you kind of
At
go,
the
"Geez, what's he
match,
giving us that
yeah.
for, or what's he not giving us, or what's he penalising us for?" But as you say, when you did watch it back the second time, his decisions weren't as bad as I initially thought.
They're
But in
consistent.
saying that, there was a couple of times that he did, I felt, make a wrong decision. However, you can't blame the ref. I mean, we were absolutely outplayed, outmuscled, outgunned by a better team on the day. And it's put us under enormous pressure now but not alone. I think we might get out of the group, but to get a home
We'll have to
quarter-final.
win both games to
Yeah.
get out of the group.
And our best chance of having anything even vaguely resembling a home quarter final is if we get Munster in the IRF. You move the game to the Aviva.
Well, actually, you mentioned the Aviva. Like, there's a lot of criticism coming in again of the atmosphere at the Aviva. But personally, I think that the atmosphere is generated from what actually occurs on the pitch.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Of course.
And if the team is being beaten up, it's very hard to get it motivated
Well,
and support your team.
Sometimes you get in when they're in the trenches, you get in behind them, and that did happen a bit during the game. I think it depended on where you were in the stadium too.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad where we were.
No, it wasn't bad
There was
where
a-
we were either.
There was a drunk bloke behind us roaring, and people were joining in with him, and songs were starting. Other parts of the pitch perhaps not so much.
People are always generally are generally quite happy to find excuses to blame the Aviva for anything, from the fall of man to the Kennedy assassination. People weren't complaining about the atmosphere in the Aviva when we played Claremont there. They weren't 2 years ago or 3 years ago. They weren't complaining about the Aviva when we played Leicester there. When we played Toulouse there. When Ireland played England there.
All back.
2 years ago when we played the All Blacks there. The stadium's nothing to do with it. It's the people in the seats, and the people in the seats and the team on the pitch have to operate together. To create
but there's a lot of-
atmosphere.
there's a lot of
so if one element is kind of off colour like the team was, then it's going to have a knock on effect.
But there's a lot of chatter about day trippers, which I think is bullshit. I mean, people pay their money; they're
Oh, yeah,
entitled
yeah,
to go,
yeah.
and they're entitled to go to the Jacks, go for pints, get hot dogs,
Absolutely.
or leave 20 minutes before the end of the match. That's entire. They pay the money;
Pay the
they're paying
money, yeah.
customers. However, like Leinster or the IRFU make a killing on these matches. Like, if we have 18,000 in the RDS and we have 47 there, there's about 30,000 difference in the crowd. If every ticket is worth 35 quid on average, that's £1,000,000 Irish rugby has received extra than they've
No,
played
yeah,
that
no,
match.
I have no
And
problems with that.
That's what
Shows you
pays
how
for,
big a home quarter final is,
doesn't
too,
it?
doesn't it?
Exactly, but like that's what pays for Brad Thorne, Kirshner, and et al. For coming over
No,
to
absolutely.
play for
No,
us.
I agree. I mean, there are sometimes, and the thing about it is, I mean, people only ever talk about or worry about what the negative effect that day trippers have is they only ever worry about it when the atmosphere is bad, because there's nothing for the team to. There's nothing for the fans to get behind, to provide something for the team to feed off, for the fans to get behind. It's a cyclical thing. And that's when the whole day tripper thing comes up, because you notice them then, because you're not watching the game, because there's nothing to watch.
True.
You know, if the team are performing really well and it's a great game and you're focused
You're
on
not
it,
looking at the day
then you're not
trippers.
looking at
But
the day
it's,
trippers.
it's just that our last two matches in the Aviva, we've been beaten in Claremont this time last year, and this match. So people kind of say, "Oh, the atmosphere is crap in the Aviva because of these extra bodies that are coming in."
Well, the atmosphere was crap because they were both
Poor displays by the
poor
team, I'd say.
displays by the team,
Well-
in combination with good displays from the opposition. It has to be said, but the displays by the team weren't what we would have hoped they would be.
Yeah, every day tripper is a potential season ticket holder.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
the
the
way
way it
I
has
look
to be
at
looked at it,
And
absolutely, yeah.
The more day trippers, the better, because, like you say, they're season ticket holders. Their kids will become season ticket holders. I mean, it's all about
If you look at it
building
this way,
a culture.
when we were in Donnybrook, there was 3,000 season ticket holders, if even, maybe half that, and now there's nearly 13,000. All of those people were day trippers. I mean, that's only
Yeah.
7 years ago.
Mhm.
All of those people, when we got to the RDS at some point, were day trippers.
Yeah.
They're now passionate season ticket holders. So you know,
Well, I think we should just draw a line under that game.
yes, definitely.
So it was an unusual
I'm
weekend.
not even going to talk about poor Jamie, and I feel so gutted for the man having to
Well, we can, yeah, but
at the end knocking that ball on. And
But like he was the one
just
that made
took
the
his eye
break.
off
I
it
wouldn't
for a
have any.
second.
I'm not going to
Oh,
criticize.
I'm not
him.
blaming him.
No,
I'm feeling sorry for him.
Yeah, I'm feeling sorry for him as well, because
I'm not
he played
blaming him at
relatively
all.
well. I mean, it's not a game that he'll keep on video for his highlights reel.
Oh, he was
Um,
gutted. See him after.
But you could see him; he was gutted after it, because he
gutted.
got. I mean, the reason we were in that position in the first place because of that break he made, and it might have been he mightn't have even had to make that pass if somebody had been bloody following him.
And he'd Kirshner on his shoulder, and I think Darcy, and I think there was only a prop.
Darcy was
and,
off. That's it. I think.
Who was it? It was somebody else on his
Madigan,
shoulder. It was Madigan, you're right. And he had only one defender out wide. He would have had at least a 3-on-1 if he'd have held that ball.
Wow. These things happen so quickly, and they're just a split
Anyway.
moment.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was
Poor
an
Jamie.
unusual. It was an unusual weekend for the Heineken Cup insofar as there was actually 8 away victories
That's
this
right,
weekend.
yeah.
So normally there's about 4, but 8.
Well, you can never. The Heineken Cup throws up these results because of the competition it is. I mean, and you get into these back-to-backs where you've got basically 160 minutes of a match. I mean, in reality, they're just one match that
Yeah,
with
you're
a
half-time.
week-long half time,
Yeah.
and to a certain extent they are, because the points difference and the cumulative points at the end of the two games, and you also have the extra fun of Nigel been carried over. I mean, it's a bit like, to a certain extent, it's a bit like a tour situation where you got the first and second test, or so
Yeah.
there's that element to it, which is why you get, to a certain extent, you get these weird reverses in fortune.
Yeah, well, one team that didn't win, and thankfully didn't even get a losing bonus point, was Cast. Ospreys beat them 21-12 in the Liberty, and Dan Bigger's the only player from the Ospreys to score a point in their 4 matches so
Well,
far.
I'll tell you, Dan
some stuff.
Dan Bigger was very good. I watched that game, but Topiric was just magnificent. He was imperial. He was the best player on the pitch by a huge distance, and the reason they won is because of him. Because every time Castro had the ball, he just took it off him, and he was
He's good at
superb.
that.
Now, in fairness to the Ospreys, they had a lot of the younger guys out, like that
That's
John
right,
guy in midfield, and a lot of the younger guys out, and they played very, very well. And what few star names they have left and were on the pitch actually played well. Hibbert played well, Ryan Jones played well, Bigger was excellent. So,
Are they going to play well enough to beat Northampton in Australia?
well, that's the question. The weird thing is, I mean, we've been talking various different things, and Ospreys are the thing. They're the one, whatever about Welsh regional rugby and however it ends up, Ospreys are the one success story in terms of actually, they're the only region that
Winning
created an
leagues.
identity and winning trophies.
Although
But
it
did
looked like
create-
there was about 400 people at the match.
Oh yeah, I mean, they're not a success in attendance terms, but they're the only team that ever managed to carve out an identity for themselves because they're the only actual region.
The one true region.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Connacht were very thumped by Toulouse in Pool 3, 37-9. I watched some of the match. Like, I just thought Toulouse just had an awful lot more class than, and clearly the guys
That's
having a
what
bit of
you'd
flu.
expect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think the flu that they had in the squad
Didn't
hampered
help.
them. Yeah.
Probably didn't help as well. But for Connacht, I mean, they're still going in. It's they've got the double header out of their way, and they're not out of it yet.
They're not, because
Not
Toulouse still
mathematically.
have to play Sarries in
Yeah.
Toulouse, and
Yeah.
both are on 15 points. Connacht on 9 points.
Yeah,
But
so
you'd
the-
imagine that, who is it has to play Zebre? They both do, actually.
Yeah.
They both have to play Zebre, so... no, hold on. Sarries have to play Connacht.
Yeah.
So
In-
Toulouse are going to get a
In
5-pointer. Toulouse are going to get a 5-pointer, and Sarries are going to beat Connacht at home, you'd have to think. So that group is going to go down to that one game at
Well,
the end.
that Saracens Toulouse game is going to be interesting because Toulouse, of course, beat Saracens in Wembley Stadium, so it's going to
Will
be.
they do it again?
Will they do it again? Saracens will be well up for it. Guys
Could
will
be a cracker of a
guys,
game.
all those South African lads, they don't like losing twice.
Yeah, but I
Be a
suppose
miracle for a Saracens
but
game.
Toulouse have got their crap performance out of the way now, and they're probably. I'm sure they don't want to be beaten for a second time at home.
No, probably not. Toulouse they're not the team. I've said it before. I've been saying it all season. They're not the team they once were.
Yeah.
But I mean, they do have a certain amount of institutional memory there.
They're playing for a home quarter as well, I'd say,
I mean, the thing is that it's not like they've any crap players. They don't. They're all very good players, but they're not the inspirational, make you fall in love with the game players that they used to have.
No, it's true. And another team that had plenty of inspirational players but just can't seem to perform is Racing, who were beaten by Quinn 17-3 in the Stoop. And
Poor old Johnny.
poor old Johnny, but they had 4 starting lines playing
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah, it's
They just seem having to gel at all.
it just shows you what a mental game rugby is, and I mean mental as in it's in your head rather than mental as in
Bonkers.
lunatic. It's
Bonkers.
It's bonkers. It's
See, we're down with the kids. We know dubstep.
it's it's a very mental game. So it doesn't matter how much. How we recover from that one now. It doesn't matter how much money you spend on your team. You've got to get them. You've got to get them to buy into something, and there's nothing for them to buy into there at the moment. They've new coaches. They've got shitloads of new players. You can't just throw them all in the pot and stir them around and make a good team. It's going to take a few years.
I mean, it took Toulon a couple of years.
Exactly. It took Toulon a
Well,
few years. to be able
I
to
made
do
the point earlier
it.
this
But
week.
Toulon have an ethos you can buy into. They have all the pilu, and they have a small blue collar town.
But you take Clermont, who beat Scarlets in Scarlets, and like that's a team that kind of have an academy and bring players through, like Rougerie. He's heart and soul from that area. His mother's the mayor or whatever.
That's right, yeah.
And like they seem to be coming back now after their defeat.
But
in the final last year.
just in terms of that, I mean, yes, they are. Clermont, as in comparison to Racing Metro, I mean, for Clermont, for all their rootedness and team spirit, etc., a very shonky team. I mean,
They can be, yeah.
if you get Clermont in a final, then you know you're going to win because they'll always blow one game of the season. So if they got to the final, it's going to be that. You look at ourselves. For a long time, we were a pretty shonky team, despite the fact that we're a representative side from our region, from our
Because
area.
we never really had the pack, though. I mean, we had elements of the pack, but we never had the.
So
the
it's no
full pack.
surprise that a team that's just been put together, almost not at random, but from all points of the globe, is still at this point unpredictable. But no, Clermont seem to be back on track all right.
Yeah, well, they're on 15 points and Quins are on 11. So Quins, obviously, they lost the first 2 matches and they've won their last 2, admittedly, both against Racing, but the proof in the pudding is the next 2 games.
And Quins have Clermont at home.
Yeah.
If they could turn them over, it'd be great for Quins, but it might also be good for Leinster.
And it's not.
Nudges into a home quarter.
But whilst one would certainly say that Clermont are the better team, it's not beyond the bounds of possibility that Quins will turn them over because, as I said, Clermont
They
can
have
be
one
very
bad
windy.
game,
They
yeah.
can be very
Flaky,
windy.
Well, Treviso were beaten by Ulster in a complete pea super. I watched a bit of that match before heading out to the.
Don't know how you saw any of it.
No, but I mean, like at one
watched
stage
it
there was a
actually,
try
yeah.
scored, and like I was going, "Is there really? How did you know
I
that?"
thought I turned it on after about 15 minutes, and I thought Ulster were looking dreadful. I thought, geez, these guys' heads are not in the game at all.
And then you realise they were Treviso.
And then no, I was looking at the right team. I mean, Afoa looked like he wasn't up for it, and and then something happened to them about half an hour in, and they just started to get a bit of, I don't know what they got, but they started throwing the ball around a bit in that fog, and they managed to find each other.
Well, they're the only 100% team in the competition, and they're actually in a very strong position now. They have to play Tigers in Welford Road, but they are 3 points ahead of Tigers as it stands, and they play Montpellier at home. So
they'll go into that final round qualified, and if they're lucky, they'll go into it 4 points ahead of Tigers.
Yeah,
if they're unlucky, they'll go in ahead.
Like Montpellier are only on 6, so you've got to really presume that they're going to send over their
that was
seconds.
a good game though. Montpellier and Leicester. That was a very good game. Very enjoyable game.
But it looked like Montpellier were in charge, and then it was only the last 10 minutes. Saints
They
came back and scored a
did
pen
a monster.
and a try.
Real end-to-end stuff. A very enjoyable game to watch. Montpellier have actually been very unfortunate. I mean, they played
well the previous week.
They played really well, and they only end up with 6 points at the end of this. Is very unfortunate for them.
They're a good team, as we saw ourselves when we went down there and drew with them a couple of years ago. They've got some good.
And we had to work our arses off just to get the draw.
Yeah, Johnny's
last kick.
Yeah. And the game just before ours was Perpignan against Munster, which was a real seesaw of a game. Munster scoring with Hanrahan in the corner in the very last play of the game.
Fair play to them. I mean, they weren't playing well.
It could come back to haunt us, though.
Yeah, that was a very bad result for Leinster.
Yeah, it could. Makes it that bit less likely that we get a home quarter because they're on a point more than we are.
And particularly now that Edinburgh beat Gloucester in Gloucester, it kind of knocks Gloucester off the.
The only thing is Gloucester will at least try.
Yeah,
because
they're home in front of the shed too.
They're home in front of the shed, and English teams always do. We've said it a lot of times. I mean, we saw it on Saturday. English teams just don't drop the head, so they'll try. But
well, and but similar to sort of our epic battles against Claremont and over the past, Gloucester have had their share of history with Munster, and I think Munster are owed something from Gloucester.
Who knows?
It'll
be a miracle, lad.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, anyway, it's back to the Pro 12, I suppose. Next weekend, we play Edinburgh over in Murrayfield. Traditionally, not a good hunting ground for us. Certainly, we lost 2 rounds of the Heineken Cup there.
Been a bogey team up until 6 years ago.
Well, about 3 seasons ago, they beat us. So we've won in the last 2 seasons there, but they did beat us 3 seasons ago in the league. I think it was one of the early matches when obviously our boys were being rested.
That's right.
But they've come back in. They had a very strong result against Gloucester.
Yeah, fantastic result.
Away.
Yeah.
So their tails will be up.
I mean, to a certain extent, we were talking about how the Scottish teams have done, and I'd say they haven't done as well as they would have hoped, particularly Glasgow.
Glasgow did much worse than they thought, and Edinburgh did better than they thought.
Yeah, Edinburgh have gone out and they've beaten 2 of the big names in their group. I mean, they've beaten Gloucester away from home and they beat Munster at home. So, I mean, they'll to a certain extent will be quite pleased at where they are on their development schedule, as it were.
They'll have their tails up, and we'll probably have to rest
a lot of guys. Yeah.
Well, you're going to have to imagine, because a lot of our fellas played in the autumn internationals and then 2 fairly big Heineken Cup matches. So the guys are due a rest.
Well, guys like Heaslip, possibly O'Brien, definitely Bod, Darcy, Carney. Healy's out anyway. Sounds like Jack McGrath might be out with a bit of concussion.
Toner, perhaps.
Toner could easily be. That's
a
huge.
big chunk of the side.
Now we do have good replacements for some of those guys, but we don't have good replacements for all of them. Namely, Bod and Darce, really, which is a bit of a crime at this stage. They may move Luke Fitzgerald into 13.
Might move Zane into 13.
What do you do with 12 is the problem, really. You've got Noel Reid, or you've got
Madigan
at 12 and Goppert at 10.
Yeah, you can see them possibly going with that.
Yeah, I think that's what it'll do. I mean, it's the best use of resources.
Yeah,
and because I think Schmidt will want Madigan to have at least be getting game time. Maybe not at 10, but he'll want him to be playing anyway.
It's bad for Madigan, though, isn't it? And possibly Ireland that he's not playing at 10.
The reason he's not playing at 10 is because does he deserve it?
Well, you could say he did on the
performance.
Performance.
Week and not in the second week.
He just had an off game, but I mean, there was an awful lot of other lads had off games.
Oh yeah, but I mean, he's had. I mean, out of it, if you look at this season to date, who's been our best out half? over the whole season to date?
Well, I thought
can't call that really.
I
To
thought-
be honest with you, Dave.
I thought Gottbert played very well in the first batch of matches.
both played
Then he thought he
well.
had a bit of a slump.
Yeah.
Madigan came in and played. He didn't get off the. He didn't hit the ground running because he played it against Munster. But then he came back in. I thought he did a fine
Some
game.
good games, yeah.
You know, in the
Pro 12
game.
in the last Pro 12 game before this, he
Scarlets.
played well in that game.
Yeah.
No, he played well in that game. But I'm not sure that he's played. I'm not. What we wanted from Madigan was to see a dominant performance this season. That he was the man. Johnny Sexton had gone, and he was going to take over that role and
But
make it his own.
maybe
the way
he's a bit psychologically scarred insofar
the way
as.
sorry, just to finish the point, the way that Johnny did when Felipe left.
But see, there was no one challenging Johnny when he took over
Yeah,
the reins.
That's true.
Now you bring in a guy, and
Sean Byrne.
yeah, but you
Was
bring
the
in
only one
Gottbert,
running.
who's fairly strong reputation behind him, and he comes in and he's not perhaps given, or Madigan hasn't been given the kind of the full. You're the man this season. You're going to be our starter. It's kind
Like
of you're
Paddy
challenging.
Jackson has in Ulster, for
But
example.
is
Well, I mean,
it
been like Jackson has been kind of shoehorned into that team,
Yeah.
and even
at
like,
the expense
at
of
the-
results.
and
on
at
occasion.
the expense of the CEO's brother, who they kind of
Yeah.
jettisoned.
But the question is it a good sign for an international out half that he's not mentally strong enough to deal with that challenge?
Well, look at Johnny Sexton. You know, when he was just starting to break into
Said
the
the same
Irish.
thing about Johnny Sexton. in
Yeah, that's what I
fairness.
was going to say. And Johnny Sexton was just breaking into the Irish setup. You know, O'Gara kind of came back at him, and Sexton went into a shell a little
Yeah,
bit.
he did, yeah.
You know, so I think maybe the way that Jackson's been given every opportunity up in Ulster, and they're really kind of nurturing him along and sort of saying, well, you can blow it, but we'll, as they did in the Heineken Cup final, but they stuck with him and they gave him the opportunity to re-establish himself. Whereas I think maybe it's putting a little bit too much pressure on Madigan having to vie for not alone establish himself as the starter and be the man of the team. He's vying for the starting berth.
Yeah, I mean, most of it, like all of that is valid. It's all valid. But the thing is, I mean, if you want a guy to be, a potential Irish international, he should get there because, he's the best player, not because he's. I mean, Paddy Jackson. Yes, I agree with you. Paddy Jackson's been given all the support he needs to get to a certain level, right? I prefer to see guys battling for a position, and let the winner take all.
Yeah, but the
I
winner
think it
isn't going
works.
to take all because Jimmy Goppert can't play for Ireland.
No, well, that's the bad thing about it. I mean,
Well, you could even say what happened to Keatley. Like, he went down to Munster. You knew he was going to be, replacing O'Gara, or certainly playing backup to O'Gara initially. But he wasn't kind of forced into the team to say, right, you're going to take over immediately. Like, he was kind of progressed in. Whereas Madigan, I feel a bit sorry for, because it's as though there's this emphasis on him, and yet at the same time he's
not
kind of
backed.
he's not backed 100%. It's kind of they've signed a big overseas signing as a 10 as well.
yeah, they've signed a good overseas signing. I'm not sure if he's a big overseas signing.
Okay, well we only
he's
signed
certainly-
two. We only signed two this
Yeah,
season.
he's certainly a very good player.
Like Dave, we're the 3 times Heineken champions, Rabobank Direct and Amlin Channel. Like we were a very big club in European rugby, and if you are going to be bought in to play for them, regardless of whether you're,
you
you're
should
an
be at
All
that
Black,
standard, yeah,
with
yeah.
50 caps, or regardless of, or you've played for Newcastle in the Premiership, you're still. This is the guy that Leinster have gone out and
But
signed.
by virtue of that same point, then the guy who's challenging him should be challenging him and been mentally strong enough and dominant enough with his performances to actually say, okay, we signed this guy. I don't care. He's not going to be a factor this season. I think it is unfortunate for Madigan because he came back to Leinster from the Irish summer tour and had to sit down while the other guy was doing his thing and performing
player
well in that
rest,
early
yeah.
batch of games, which actually did put him under a lot more pressure because he wasn't just having the pressure of coming up against an experienced out half. He was under pressure of coming up against an experienced out half. He was playing very well
But
at that
and
time.
I also think when he was brought back into some of the games this season, he was brought back in out of position. He's played at 12.
Yeah, he was unlucky.
Needs must.
I think he would have played more games at 10, but injuries did have an effect on where he was selected. For example, was it Glasgow? He came on after 7 minutes and had to play
15
Had to
or
play
something.
15/wing actually.
Yeah.
I would have thought that O'Connor's original anticipation, although I'm not so sure seeing the substitution policy on Saturday, I would have thought that O'Connor's original intention was to give him 20-25 minutes at 10 in that game.
Anyway, I don't think we're going to solve the Goppert Madigan
No.
question
But it's
this week.
It is.
We are with the aid of weird science. Matic Barpers.
it is going to be a big test for O'Connor to lift the team after
Yeah.
that result
Yeah.
at the weekend. And you know, like this is what Andrew Potts from on Facebook asks. He says Leinster have been over the years, but we've been fairly consistent. But this season we've been up one week, down the next, back. You know, the curate's egg, as we've mentioned umpteen times. But like we really have, even you know, the two Heineken Cup matches are a perfect example of it.
Well, that's
Play the best we've played all season and possibly the worst we've played all season within a week of each other.
They are the season in microcosm, all right. I mean, yeah, no, that's a very good question.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm not sure if I agree. I like when you say we've been inconsistent. We've still won whatever it is. We've lost 3 games, I think, all season. And yeah, we've had some not great performances, but as we've said, it's such a game that is played in the mind that you can't be ripping up trees every single week. It's just not possible. You've got to have some, and the really good teams, when they have an off week, they get a shitty, crappy win that they stumble over the line and fall in for a try at the last minute. And we've had a couple of them, and that to me is the sign of a good team. Yes, we could be a little bit more consistent, but look at our stats in defence, for example. Like, we've got the meanest defence in both the Heineken Cup and the Rabo, I think.
I'd
Maybe
agree.
not now.
Well, maybe not now.
I'd agree with all that. The one thing I would say is that in terms of like the 1 week we do this, the other week we do the other thing, is that
I'm not saying there's no truth to it.
oh no
I'm
no
just
no
saying
there is the element of it that worries me is, I mean, in the days we play well, we say okay, or the days we play poorly, we say, oh, the defensive line is too soft. We didn't challenge enough at the breakdown. And
And
there's
that's true.
There's 3 or 4 oft-voiced complaints that we've had, and then we play well and we seem to address all those.
Yeah.
Then the next
And
week,
we're back again.
next week, even if we win, we still have there's those 3 or 4 things again. I mean, there's a certain consistency of elements that are worrying in those off performances. Now, we've won most of those off performances. We lost against Munster, we lost against Northampton Saints, but again against Northampton Saints, I mean, there were elements that the kicking was loose. We didn't contest the breakdown. Our defensive line was soft out the pitch. When we got into the red zone, it was very good, but out the pitch, it was quite soft. So there's elements that keep.
I think we were
cropping
blown
up.
away at the breakdown.
Yeah. Well, we were to a certain extent, but we weren't competing for whatever reason. So there's elements that keep reoccurring. Now, I agree with what you say, and to a certain extent, I agree with what Andrew says as well. I think both are true. I think there's a truth in there.
There's something in the middle there that we could perhaps agree on.
Yeah.
So there's other matches, obviously, in the Pro 12 this week. Ulster play another Italian team, this time Zebre.
Do Ulster ever
4
play
in a
anyone
row.
who isn't Italian
4 in a
teams?
row.
Yeah.
So
Look
obviously
about
we can't afford to slip up against Edinburgh, because Ulster are on our heels in the table, and you gotta
And
really,
they're at home against
yeah,
Zebre.
you gotta think that's going to be a 5-pointer for them.
But they're coming down to us at Christmas.
Yeah.
And they probably rest more players than we will. So
The question is, in terms of the player management, who's going to be available for? I mean, if you look at this block of games that are 2 games, I'd say players will be available for only one of them. So I'd say Ulster will probably keep their players, maybe for the game against us, or maybe they'll decide to.
no, they've Munster 6 days later. Or
Do they have
something.
Munster
They'll be,
6 days later? Well, then what I'd say is they'll play them against Zebre, give them an easy rest.
Yeah.
The only thing is, if they hadn't picked those players, because Zebre have done quite well in picking off favourite teams away from home in the league this season. They're not in Ulster's class, but they could cause them a bit
to
of
not
problems.
get a bonus point.
Yeah.
I think that
Treviso nearly did it to them in Ravenhill last season. Do you remember that?
They did, yeah.
they did.
Got a draw, was it?
They got a 29
draw,
all draw, I think. But like, it's 3 games in this section, really, rather than 2, because we've got 2 Interpros and we've got this game first.
Yeah, well, that's true.
So if you're Joe Schmidt, you'll blend those teams over 3 weeks, and you'll have X guys rested this week, Y guys rested next week, and Z guys rested, and you'll just a lovely little bit of rotation. Someone will be on the bench some weeks.
I love the way Schmidt used to do
He
it.
used
He
to do
played
that
Darcy
very
in
well.
one game and a young kid, and then he'd play O'Driscoll in the next game and a young kid at 12. And
Exactly.
it just
So-
works so well, instead of playing the two lads in one game and then having two
The Cheika
novices.
thing where he'd send the whole fucking squad to the Dragons to get hammered, you know.
Yeah.
When we're in a new paradigm now, so it'll be interesting to see what way Matt
It
O'Connor
will be,
approaches
yeah.
it.
I hope he does a Joe Schmidt and blends those three teams. So as you got, and it's a bit of an art and a bit of a science, but it's certainly doable if you look at the names on the team sheet and we don't have that many injuries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's well doable.
Well, Munster have their third game in Musgrave Park against the Scarlets, and like they're top of the table. So they've won both their matches in Musgrave Park. It's become a fortress Musgrave.
Yeah, well, if you only pay shit there. The 5 points for Munster.
Yeah.
More than likely.
And Connacht have played a Dragons, so they have a slight chance to get back on their bike.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting game. Actually, Dragons haven't been playing badly this season.
No.
We've seen them play very well a couple of times, so that'll be an interesting game.
Connacht are
Actually,
at home though, are they?
Yeah.
yeah, they are. Yeah,
Well,
Dragons aren't great travellers.
I think Connacht might
No, I'd say
get back on the horse. now.
Connacht will get a win there.
And our other challenger, Glasgow, play Treviso. Like Glasgow, I thought were going to have a really good Heineken Cup this season, and
They're having a big wobble now.
they
aren't
really are, and they've had a wobble in the league as well. Like I think they lost a couple of matches on the trot. I think they won the last one, but they lost the previous
And
two in the league.
Treviso actually are quite expert at picking off wobbly teams.
Yeah.
It's what they do.
And again, is it in Treviso?
It's in Glasgow.
Is it in Benetton?
Well, one game that didn't really get much coverage was Leinster's victory in the BNI Cup against Cross Keys. Like we beat them 30 points to 14, and another bonus point win, which puts us pretty unassailable and pretty much guaranteed a home quarter final.
Yeah. We have to lose both of our last two games, and bearing in mind one of them is against Ealing Trailfinders, who found their trail into the championship.
Is that not like a travel agent?
It sounds like it, doesn't
It's like
it?
it sounds like it's the works team for travel agents.
But you could send the three of us over there with the rest of the team, and we could probably grind out a win in the Trailfinders. If we could,
Or get a nice holiday anyway.
Yeah.
we could stand puffing on the sidelines.
Yeah, well, there was an interesting rumour today I heard on Twitter that Jack McGrath has signed
For Leinster.
For Leinster, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that one.
Yeah.
But hold on, Jack McGrath hasn't signed because he already had another year on his contract. He's a contract to 2015. The original rumour was he was going to go to Ulster, and now he's not. Maybe he signed an extension to that. Maybe he's gone an extra year or two on top of it, but his contract actually doesn't finish this season.
We heard the same about Andrew Connolly.
Yeah,
didn't we?
I'll wait until I hear something a bit more confirmed than a
Twitter.
a public Q&A, a report on Twitter of a public Q&A.
Well, the rumours are that Moore and McGrath are going nowhere, but they're rumours. So who knows? I mean, the rumour was Luke Fitzgerald was going to Munster,
Well,
and
I believe
everybody
he was very close to
Very,
going,
very
though. I
close.
mean, it
Very
was an
close.
intervention from Schmidt that saved that one. That's obviously McGrath. Well, there's rumours of McGrath, but there's been a few other notable names. Rory Best has re-signed. Donegal Ryan's re-signed, although they are losing Casey Lalalu. But there's been have I got that wrong as well? But there's been very
Well, close. That was
well, okay,
pretty
close.
good.
Close. Well, 90%. I'm happy with 90%.
Yeah, there was 4 syllables. You got 3 of them right.
Okay, well, that's fine.
5 syllables. You got 4 of them right.
75%. I'm happy with that. But there's been very little noise coming out of Leinster about any of our signings, and we're
We
obviously,
always do that.
but we always do it. But there's still doubt about obviously McGrath. Nothing's really been confirmed with him. There's O'Brien and Heaslip.
If there was real worries over O'Brien and Heaslip, and I'm not saying for a minute that they're either going or staying, but if there was real worries over them, somebody would have been doing something in the media. Maybe their agent, maybe some French club, maybe somebody would have been up to some bullshit in the media.
Yeah.
There's obviously negotiations progressing, and I'm sure they're not quite over yet, but Leinster have this habit of announcing 23 signings in the middle of January.
It's not a habit, it's policy. Leinster's policy, it's their official policy, is not to release any information about signings until all their signings are made.
I mean, we've seen some years where somebody's announced their own signing and it hasn't actually been officially announced, even though nobody's denying it it hasn't. It's gone on for months, sometimes without an official announcement. So, I mean, O'Brien and Heaslip are the big worries. Darcy wants another year. I'm sure Jennings will get signed again, but there's no. They're the two big worrying ones. If we lose them, certainly if we lose both of them, it's.
Well,
Would be
at least what
weeping
we know,
and a
what we
gnashing
know
of
is
teeth.
that the IRFU are in business, have their business hats on, because
This
there's
time.
business. No, but their business is being done at this point in
Oh,
time.
yeah.
This is when it's been done now.
Yeah.
I mean, there was talk about Heaslip, talk about O'Brien, and I mean that was been talked about before even the autumn internationals. But as we all know, the IRFU don't do their business before the autumn internationals. They do their business at the end of the year. So it's from now on that we can begin to worry in earnest.
Yeah, but the thing is, as we saw at the weekend, like we are a very average team without O'Brien in it,
Yeah.
and it is imperative if Leinster want to continue at the top of the tree that we keep Sean playing for us.
It's very simple. The RFU can guarantee that Sean stays with us for a long time if they pay him what he's worth. It's very simple.
Yeah, but you know, once
It's called the
you
free
open that,
market.
once you open that door, once Sean O'Brien gets X €100,000, then you know somebody else. Look at Johnny wanted what Heaslip was on,
Yeah.
and it doesn't sound like he was given it, so he walked. If Sean gets more than Jamie Heaslip is on, somebody else is going to come along and say, well, you know, maybe.
Yeah, but like it's a whole knock-on effect. I mean, there isn't going to be 47,000 people going to a big match in if Leinster are on a slide. You know,
Yeah,
like that's
of
just
course.
like it's going to drop down. Like I mean, you just have to look at say the soccer team, for instance. You know, the team is not successful. People will just say, "No, I'm
If the,
not
player,
going."
if
Well,
the, if
I
the, if the
remember
players
one
aren't in
year-
the country, people won't go and watch the sports. I mean, there was a time in this country when the soccer teams of Dublin would get crowds that would be equal to the soccer clubs of London. You'd get Drums, you'd have Shells, you'd have
Rovers.
Rovers. Would all be getting 20 and 30,000
Yeah.
crowds for their games, but the players left, and so did the crowds. That's the lesson.
But that's what the IRFU have got to be very conscious of.
Well, you said it a couple of years ago, Dave, when Brad Thorne signed, and I think he played his debut against the Ospreys.
Yeah.
And the amount of extra tickets sold just for that one match in the
Yeah.
RDS paid his contract. So, you know, if you want to look at it that way, one home quarter final in Lansdowne Road
Yeah.
gets Sean O'Brien's wages and probably Jamie
And probably
Heaslip's
Jamie's
as well.
too, because they're not going to be looking for their market value, so they're not. They're not. I mean, because their
Because they
market,
get a lot of
their,
other
market
things.
their market value is out of the IRFU's range. I mean, Sean O'Brien could get the bones of €1 million if he went to Japan, for example, right?
Yeah.
So the market value isn't what they're looking for, but what they're looking for is a fair reflection of their contribution to Irish rugby, both now and in the future.
All very salient points. Anyway, thanks again, lads, and thanks a million for watching. Cheers.